Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong, and in an effort to show world peace, we have done something a little different in the lounge this week. We've invited our friends from the Montreal writing crew into the Maple Leafs Lounge to talk all about the big playoff series that's coming. And this is also to show that you can still be friends and can be kind to people, even if you don't totally agree with their side of the story or, along those lines. So it's so nice to have with us Melissa Boyd. She is a backbone of the Hockey Writers in so many different ways, working with the social media, working with the website, and obviously a big part of the Montreal team, and just launched a new show for the Hockey Writers that's Chicks and Sticks. So welcome Melissa Boyd to the show. And also Trege Wilson, another Montreal Canadiens writer, lives out in Nova Scotia, but is described as a lifelong Habs fan, and also is a podcast host for Habs Unfiltered. And just to keep it balanced, so I'm not totally outnumbered here, I brought my friend Peter Baracchini, who writes for the Leafs crew. He's also does a lot of the draft prospect stuff for the Hockey Writers, and he's also the co-host of the Leafs podcast on Hockey Writers that is Sticks in the Six. So let's jump right in because this is exciting. I'm so happy you guys have joined us. So many times we're in our echo chambers, and we've all heard, if you're in the Leaf land, and you guys have heard the overlap of that, this is the Leafs year, the Leafs. Give us the feeling in Montreal and for the Montreal faithful. Is this a team that could pull an upset and who knows, make it into the third round, even fourth round? Who knows, right? Is this as lopsided as some would have us believe at this point, Melissa?
I don't think it's as lopsided as, I believe it was Craig Button who sort of instantly said, the Leafs are going to sweep. Canadians aren't going to win a game. I don't think it's that lopsided. Obviously, Toronto is favored, and that's normal and that's understandable. They had a great regular season. They have a great team. We all know that. But I think Montreal, I think the underdog tag suits Montreal well. They've played well with it over the past decade even. They've had big upsets. And even last year in the bubble, they upset the Penguins when, first of all, nobody thought they should be there and nobody thought they were going to do anything. So they've done it before, so there's no reason why they can't do it again. I think the fans in Montreal right now are a bit disappointed with how the season went, to be honest with you. I think they were expecting a little bit more, so now is the chance for them to really redeem themselves.
Yeah, they certainly didn't like the title juggernaut.
No,
so
no, that
went
did
away
not.
pretty quick.
Yeah. They did not wear that one well, no.
No, I don't think it's going to be. I truly believe with a healthy Montreal Canadiens and arrested Montreal Canadiens, this could go either way. Now I've seen the line combinations that John Liu put out today. I don't know if I'm happy with those for Montreal, but it's what I expected. I'm not surprised with the lineups, not how I would have them, but I think Montreal's built for the playoffs. I think that's a true statement that Bergevin made at the first of the season. I think the 25 games in 41 days hurt them coming in the end, and having 6 of their top players out for the majority. In the last 3-game series against Toronto barely beat them in 2 games, and lost in 1. And Montreal had their top 6 players out, or 6 of their top players out. So I still believe. I'll leave my predictions to the end, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think Toronto fans are going to be by eating their words come to the end of the series, no matter which way it goes.
All right. So, Peter, give us the Toronto side of this when it comes to Montreal. We get stuck. We've heard this all season long, and we kind of get caught up in it. Is this Toronto series to lose at this point?
If you think about it, yeah. I mean, they're the North champs for the reason. They're the ones that all eyes are going to be on, and if anything bad happens with another first round exit, it's going to hurt them. And Alex, our fellow Leaf writer Hobson, he wrote an article about how the Leafs resiliency or how being resilient is going to help them through the playoffs, and they're basically their own worst enemy at this point. And I kind of agree with that. We looked at what happened last year in the bubble against Columbus. They were the favorites, given the fact that the Maple Leafs were a wild card team. Columbus comes in, we lose 3-2 in the 5-game series. Now, Money Puck, I saw a graphic. They had him as a 75% chance to win compared to the 25% for the Habs. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because last year, the year before, we all thought that this is going to be a year for the Leafs. In theory, this is the year for the Leafs, but you know what? Given the fact that other teams are hungry, especially the Habs right now, it's going to be a tough battle. And I have the Maple Leafs in 6. It's not a sweep. They're going to be in tough, and the Habs are going to show their best side.
All right, so let's switch to the lineups. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I'm seeing that Price jersey behind you right now, and we know he's going to be back, and we know what he can do if he gets hot. So tell us, let us know in the lounge here what the injury situation is, what the lineup situation is for Montreal.
As of right now, I believe it's only Drouin that won't be back. Dano with his concussion, I think is still a bit iffy, but he was practicing today on the top line. Price is back. Everyone except Weber actually practiced today. I don't know if anyone's seen the taken down picture of Weber getting his vaccine, but he has a brace on his wrist. I don't know if it's a hand or a wrist injury. Melissa, you might know more about that than I do. But so as of right now, the only player of those injured that's not back is that we expected back is Weber right now.
Yeah.
Melissa, what we've talked about a lot in Leafland is when these guys are injured, it takes them a little while to get their legs back. Yeah. With so many guys coming back from injury with Montreal, is that a bit of a concern when so many big guys were down?
It could be, although we saw last year that the break between the end of the season and the bubble actually probably benefited the Canadiens more than any other team. Shea Weber looked like he was 25 going on 26, so I think this break that they'll be off for a week is going to be really beneficial to them. I'm not worried about Gallagher. We know what he brings. He brings 150% every time he steps on the ice. So I'm not worried about rest with him. I think this is really beneficial as we mentioned earlier how many games they've played in the last number of days. And it also gives a chance, I think, for the first time since he's taken over as coach, give a chance to Ducharme to actually practice a little bit. They've been really short on practice time, so I'm expecting them to come out way more sharp than they have been, hopefully, in their execution and what they want to do. So.
Yeah. There's so many reasons that COVID has been, we all despise the COVID situation and everything else, but the Canucks and Flames having to play for an extra week here to push us this series back so far is kind of like, if you're in Leafland, you really wanted this series to start right now.
Yeah.
You guys can keep on mending because Toronto was pretty healthy coming into this one, Peter.
Very healthy, yeah. And I think the only two situations was Robbie, Nash, and Zach Hyman. Obviously, cap concerns, and granted that there's no salary cap right now. Most likely, both of them are going to be inserted into the lineup. Players are going to be taken out, most likely Pierre Engvall and Alex Galchenyuk. But the last few games served as a really good audition for players like Engvall, who was on a tear. Galchenyuk, slow production in the last few weeks, but then he started to pick up his play. So this is a really good sign with their depth, that if another player goes down, someone could be inserted into the lineup. But right now with Zach Hyman and Nash coming back in, those are two key pieces. And especially with, Hyman rounding out that top line, being most likely slotted alongside Matthews and Marner, it's going to be a very interesting situation right now. And Riley Nash coming in as that third center, the depth on this team right now is impeccable.
If you're liking what you're seeing and hearing, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, like and follow us on all your favorite social media accounts. And please head on over to thehockeywriters.com. Check out the Montreal Canadiens team. They've got some awesome articles in there. I've been doing some reading through that stuff to see who this team is. It's you get to know a team so much better. Although they played so much in the regular season, playoffs, you really want to get to know what this team is all about. So, and look at this. We're minutes in. No one's arguing. No one's upset. We're just having a nice chat. This can be cordial, everyone. So be nice this week. Now tell me, Melissa, how do you see Montreal? You said they're going to get some practice time. So how do you see them beating Toronto? What do you think they're going to key in on the most to beat Toronto?
I think obviously, as it has since he's been with the team, it starts in goal. So I think number one is Carey Price is going to have to outperform Jack Campbell. And Carey Price is going to have to be the Carey Price we know, Carey Price that we love as Habs fans. That's where it's going to start, and probably end. The second thing will be obviously finding a way to at least contain Marner and Matthews. They were able to really contain McDavid and Draisaitl this season. I think probably of the teams in the North Division, I think they limited them probably the best, but weren't as successful against Toronto's dynamic duo. So that will be obviously key as well. And it was nice to see at practice today, at least we weren't all that thrilled with the lines, but at least we saw our top line back intact with Danault, Gallagher, and Tatar. So if they can sort of keep it pretty even in terms of goals against and goals for against that top line, I think that will put us in with a fighting chance.
So is Danault the guy that's going to be on Matthews this series?
I'm 99.9% sure, yes. Yeah. I know when Danault was out this past week, they had Jake Evans line out against Matthews, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or Suzuki, one of the two. So there are other options, but for sure, yes, you can pretty much take that to the bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson, any additions to that with how do they beat this Toronto team?
I think the Price is you're absolutely right. He's the end all be all. If he plays like Price mid-season this year, we're not going to win. If he plays like Price bubble last year, we're still in the game. I think time and space. They got to take the time and space away from the Toronto Maple Leafs. I believe Marner's the most key person on that line and not Matthews. You take the Marner out of the play, he doesn't pass the puck to Matthews, and because Matthews will score from anywhere. I mean, credit where credit is due. Matthews is probably one of the most prolific goal scorers in our game right now. I just swallowed some vomit saying that, but it's absolutely true. Time and space. They got to meet Toronto at the blue line. Montreal has a habit of coming back, setting up, and letting the team come in. They can't do that with Toronto. They got to meet them at the blue line and then take Marner out of the play on that top line, and I think you'll see success.
That was very kind of you. That was very kind. Peter, let's flip it and let these writers know how Toronto, what are they going to be doing to beat Montreal?
Two things. One, getting a lot of shots on Carey Price. As they alluded to, Carey Price is going to be the key for them. And we saw last year, Carey Price had kind of, an up and down regular season, but he came to play in the playoffs. And playoff Carey Price is a bear that you really don't want to poke. We saw that last year, swept the Penguins, and he was basically their MVP throughout their playoff run. But also, just being aware in transition. Montreal is quick in transition. If we turn the puck over, they have players that can easily move it up quickly. I mean, they've mentioned Danault, they've mentioned Tatar, but I'm also looking at Nick Suzuki, who's just an absolute beast out there when he's on the ice. And granted, the top line is going to get a lot of the attention, but centering that second line, I think Suzuki is, going to be a real factor and a real player to watch for the Maple Leafs at this point.
I'm going to add to that Toronto's going to have to stay disciplined in this because there's a guy named Corey Perry out there that can get on some nerves, and there's a few hitters out there that just throw some checks. And during the regular season, Montreal nearly doubled Toronto in hits. So they've got to not do the chops after those things and stay disciplined. And really, Montreal can take all the penalties they want because Toronto's not going to score. Just a break, really. Go to commercial during that. So key players, obviously we've talked about Price, but who are the other guys? Like I just mentioned Corey Perry, who is just such an X factor, and we saw what he did with Dallas last year in the playoffs. Who are some of the Montreal players that we should be keeping an eye on during this playoff time?
I think Anderson's going to be a big guy in play. In the Tampa series, when Columbus put Tampa out in the first round, Steve Yzerman was on record saying they had no opposition to Anderson. They didn't know how to stop this guy. A healthy Anderson, I think he's going to play. He's going to finish all his checks. He's going to rush to the net. He has the size and the speed. Nick Suzuki's another one. And I think the play of Montreal's defense is going to be, are we going to get the trident we had last year, or are we going to get the mess that we had this year? Really, that's what I think the key players to this team's going to be.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to say, but piggybacking a bit off the defense, Jeff Petrie, for sure. He drives so much for the Canadiens, especially offensively. We all know that puck-moving defensemen are not numerous on the Canadiens roster right now. So he struggled through the middle part of the season. Thankfully, he really picked it up in the last 10 games or so. So he's going to be a huge factor driving the play in both zones. He's our best defenseman. I think we can safely say that now. So for me, in addition to Anderson and Suzuki, who of course, and I think also role players a bit like Arturi Lehkonen, who seems to always play his best during the playoffs. He's, kind of inconsistent and even in and out of the lineup during the regular season. But again, lately he's been amazing, and he seems to have really created a great chemistry with Jake Evans and Paul Byron. So I think that will be a key as well, the secondary scoring and contributions.
I'll also add, if he gets into the series, Cole Caulfield could, if he ever plays.
Of course, yeah.
I was going to say Eric Stahl. I see a veteran guy that got saved from a sinking ship, and this is a chance to really do something. Is he a guy that could really turn the series on its head a bit?
I want to say yes, because I like the addition of Stahl when it happened. I thought it was a good move. It just didn't turn out to be a good move. Apparently, he had an injury. Take that for what it is. He could make a difference either way, for good or for bad, and that's where I look at Stahl right now. Yeah,
agreed. Yeah. So it's certainly an opportunity to redeem himself for a very below average season with both Buffalo and Montreal. So yes, he'll definitely be motivated. So we hope.
He's just been saving up for the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the excuse we'll use.
All right. Well, Peter, you alluded to it earlier. You kind of gave your pick, but let's all go on the record now in friendly fashion and say what we think this series is going to be, how many games, who's moving on to the second round, and we'll add to that, who will it be against? Peter, you go first.
Yeah, I already gave my pick, Toronto in 6. The fact that, people are saying Toronto in 4, Toronto in 5. I think even if it goes 7, I'm pretty sure this is what we all wanted. A very, battle to the very end, 7 games. This isn't, I don't know what else to say. I've been wanting this series ever since the early thousands from both teams. Now we're finally getting it. If it goes all the way, great. If it's 6 games, so be it. But it still wouldn't count out Montreal no matter what. Never underrate your opponent during the playoffs, no matter what.
All right, Melissa.
Well, I have to go with the Habs here. I have to follow my heart. And I'm going to say Habs in 7. Yes, I agree, Peter. I hope it goes all the way. I think I actually said this to Peter this week. I said my uncle texted me the minute that it was confirmed. My uncle, who's been a lifelong Habs fan, and, he doesn't text me all that often, but he was like, I'm so excited. So I think that's sort of the overall feeling here that this is actually happening. So yeah, let's make it go all the way with the Habs pulling it out in the end.
I'm going to say Leafs in 6. My heart says Habs, and this is the Stanley Cup final of 93 that was a high stick away from in 93. Yeah. So Habs won that in 5. So I could say that, but we don't have the team we had then. My heart says I'm with you, Melissa. Habs in 7. I prefer Habs in 4, so I survive. My heart doesn't give out.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
But my head and the reality of the situation, I'm going to say Leafs in 6. I hate to say it again. I have to wash my mouth out, but I'm going to have to say it.
Yeah, since it's been confirmed, I've needed quite a bit of Pepto-Bismol. The Leafs have a way of ripping your heart out. And if there's a way to really mess this series up, it's not going to be a Boston disaster. It's going to be losing to Montreal. It's going to mess everything up. But I'm not, there's no possible way I'm going to say that. I'm going with Leafs in 5, and they will be against the Edmonton Oilers. Do we all agree it's Edmonton coming out of that series?
I agree.
Yeah, I think so.
Hellebuck could steal that series.
Hellebuck in that, yeah.
You can steal the series, but Draisaitl and McDavid are too strong for that defense.
I think so.
Wow, we found common ground as well. This is proof right here in the Maple Leafs lounge that we can all get along, we can all talk hockey and all be friends about it. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us from over in the Montreal writing staff. It's been a pleasure. We hope that we can have you guys back with us next weekend to see how things have gone and where they're going. Sure. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I need to find my Pepto, but we'll see you next week. We're going to flip over and have some Leafs writers join us now and see the other side of the story. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that was fun with our Montreal Canadiens writers, and now we switched over, and we didn't boot them out, but they left. But that's what we said. Goodbye, farewell, au revoir, and we welcomed in our usual Maple Leaf writers. We've got the old prof Jim Parsons joining us, and Alex Hobson. Now, guys, we just heard from the Montreal staff telling us ways that this series could play out, what we should be looking for. Now, Peter is in an interesting position because he's got so many family members that are Montreal. So he kind of knows both sides of the story. So in this bloop of the segment on the Maple Leaf Lounge, he's going to be telling us a little bit more on the Montreal side, while you guys are telling him on the Toronto side. So this is a well-rounded show to get all of our subscribers, followers in the know for this amazing playoff series that we've been waiting for since 1979. That's right. Even before Peter and Alex were born, we've been waiting for this series. So it's finally here. So let's talk about it. Let's start out with, guys, we are in this echo chamber of this is Toronto's year, and we kind of get caught up in that excitement. But Alex, is there an opportunity here for Montreal to pull an upset and Toronto to be eating their words at this point?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's common knowledge that in the playoffs, nothing is ever a given. I mean, any team can turn it on at any time. You look at the 2019-20 playoffs, and I don't think anyone expected the Columbus Blue Jackets to beat the Lightning in round 1, let alone sweep them. So right there is just perfect proof that, yeah, the Leafs can't go into this expecting anything to go their way smoothly, or not necessarily like to go their way smoothly, but they can't go in there expecting it to be a walk in the park is what I'm getting at. You can even just, if you want to look at last year in the bubble, I don't think anyone expected Montreal. They were the last team to qualify for the play-in round. And I don't think anyone would have expected them to come out and beat Pittsburgh, but they did. So, ultimately the Leafs are in charge of their own destiny here. I know they're heavily favored in this series, and I know they've got all the pieces to make it work, but they can't discount Montreal. Carey Price goes on a heater, and all of a sudden their path to round 2 becomes that much more difficult.
Jim, is this a cakewalk for Toronto?
Oh, I don't think so. I like Carey Price. I think he's one of the great NHL players ever. So he can steal the series, and he is going to be back in. And the Canadiens' goalie is excellent. Goalie play is excellent. So they do have that impact. I don't think they're as deep as the Maple Leafs are. I think that's a huge benefit for the Maple Leafs. They have depth. So I think if they keep rolling their lines and are able to do that, I think they'll have a good chance if it turns out to be a long series to survive and prosper.
Peter, it sounds eerie how similar these descriptions have been when we talk about this. Peter, what did you hear from the Habs side? Are they really thinking an upset at this point?
I mean, it's something that you can't discredit. I mean, playoffs are what upsets are all about, right? We've seen that time and time again. And as Alex mentioned last year, and even when we talked with the Habs writers, they swept the Pittsburgh Penguins. No one expected that. Carey Price, was their MVP. Nick Suzuki had 7 points in 10 games. That was his coming out party for him, as he's had a breakout performance in that playoffs. And the fact of the matter is, I think Melissa said it best. I think they tend to play well as sort of like that underdog role. They don't have quite the star power yet, but they still thrive with that moniker. And this is the perfect time for them, because they were the underdogs last year against Pittsburgh, a major underdog. And look what happened. So the fact that they're coming in as that same title this year, knowing how great the Maple Leafs had of a season, knowing that they're the North Division champs, they're probably coming in with the mentality, we've been here before. Last year, previous times, this isn't new to us. We're going to go out, we're going to play hard, and they're going to be aggressive. And you mentioned it against when we were talking with them, that they had a sizable advantage in terms of hits. And with Josh Anderson leading the way in that regard, look out, because they're going to start throwing the body.
Now, when we talk about playoffs, I think Keith said it best, is everything's reset. No stats carry over, no wins, no losses, no goals, nothing. This is starting from day one. And when you look back at how Montreal started the season, as we talked about with the Habs writers, that they were the juggernauts, as Chris Johnson said. And they wore that for a little while. And now they're the dark horse. So there's definitely the possibility. And I'm telling you guys, as a Toronto fan, I've had my heart ripped out so many times. If this is a loss to Montreal, oh my. Anyway, we're gonna keep going. I can't even imagine. We're gonna keep going. So let's talk about the injury situation. At this point, I think everyone is healthy except for Zach Bogosian. Freddie Anderson got back into play, so it looks like they've got 3 goalies to roll now, and Campbell will be the starter. Bogosian missing maybe the first week, which could be 4 games. So other than that, it looks like everyone's back. So there's a lot of decisions that Sheldon Keefe has to make now. TSN on their broadcast on Friday night, they had Nash centering the third line and starting in game 1. That kind of stuck out to me. The guy hasn't played for Toronto at all. I want Engvall there or Brooks there, one of these guys that have been working with the team all season long. Peter, what's your thought on how that roster, what's the situation with Toronto going into game 1?
Well, it's kind of like with Frederik Andersen, with his length of absence. You want to see what he can do. And it just so happens that he was put on the shelf longer because of the Maple Leafs cap situation. Same with Zach Hyman. The fact that his first game is going to be a playoff game is going to be pretty big. But we've seen what Robbie Nash could do in the playoffs. Last year with the Columbus, 2 years ago with the Boston Bruins, he was an absolute thorn in their sides. And I'm kind of happy that he's now a Maple Leaf because I've wanted him to be the sort of like one of the bottom six centers for this team. But overall, I think it's going to be great for him. They know that he's expected to be a defensive force. You have Mikheyev and Kerfoot on the wings that are going to be those kind of players that are built for speed to get the puck. He's just going to trail in. Not going to do a whole lot offensively, but he's going to be a factor, and maybe he will put up like the points that he had in his breakout year, where I believe he had 40. He's going to be in a whole entire different role. He's going to let the work go to Mikheyev and Kerfoot, chip in every now and then, but they got a good balance on that line. So I think it fits really well with his style of play that they got the speed and they got that balance basically on all lines for the top line, the second, and even the third line right now.
Alex, I know you're the big fan of Alex Galchenyuk, and as we've talked about before, he's probably going to be the odd man out in that top six when Hyman is back. I don't know, with Galchenyuk against Montreal, that's just one of those things where that was a team that he came up with, and I would love to see him in that lineup beating up his old team, but I understand how Keefe has got a lot of tough decisions to make.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is just one of those things where it's a good problem to have. You have so many forward options, and I would be eternally surprised if Sheldon Keefe stuck with the same lineup in every single game, unless that same lineup came out and fired on all cylinders and got the job done in every aspect, and there was no reason to change, then maybe he would do that. But overall, I think you're going to be seeing different guys shifting in and out of the lineup now. And, when we talked last week, I brought up how it was unfortunate to see that Galchenyuk was the odd man out. But when we recorded last week, I was saying that in thinking that he would be the 13th forward, but it seems just over based on these past couple games, Pierre Engvall might be that 13th forward now. He's been on a bit of a tear right now. And I you could make the argument for Galchenyuk and say that he's playing against Montreal. It's his former team, so he'll be a little extra motivated. Maybe he leapfrogs Engvall on the depth chart, but I don't know. Like the guys on the TSN broadcast on Friday night were very high on Engvall and how he's kind of like stepped up his game in the wake of the fact that he might not be a regular forward for them come playoff time. So I think overall they're probably going to start Riley Nash just because in game one anyways, just because he hasn't been able to get any regular season games in with the Leafs. So if you're going to try him out and see what you have in him, you kind of got to do it early on and not in an elimination game. Having said that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Galchenyuk get a shot eventually. I think Keefe is really going to utilize his depth options.
Engvall was the one guy that came with Keefe when he was called up to the job. He was on the flight to Arizona with him. And so Keefe is a big believer in Engvall. He knows what he can do with the Marlies during that playoff run. So I think Engvall, I don't think it's all said and done here yet. Engvall, like you said, he's been playing great hockey and the hockey that Keefe said he could play. So the old prof, I know you love all these guys, but they can't all play. Who are you seeing have to ride the pine to start this series?
Well, I don't know about riding the pines, but I do buy what Alex was saying. I when I looked at it logically, it struck me that Foligno and Zach Hyman were much more flexible. I think Galchenyuk gives us more on the top line. And I really like his play because when he was a goal-scoring prodigy, really, with the Canadiens, but he hasn't really scored that much. And you could say, oh, his skills have diminished, but I don't think so. I think he's really working hard to fit in, and his play respects his line mates and their unique skills. So I think he fits better in the top six than the other two, which I think are much more flexible. That said, Alex was pointing out that there's no more creative bench boss. Maybe there is, but I don't know them than Keefe. He really does like to flip flop around and see what's going on. So a line is not a line with the Maple Leafs. It's very creative and depends on what's going on. So I can see lots of Galchenyuk in the stuff, but I also can see Riley Nash too. I think one of Keefe's big deals at the beginning of the year, and he really said it when everybody expected him to talk about how important the top line was. He really spoke about the third line and really putting together a shutdown defensive line. And I think that's on his mind. So maybe Hyman isn't the guy on his mind for that third line. Maybe Nash is that guy. I think Nash was a great pickup from what I read. So I think it's flexible, and I don't have a clue how he's going to play it, but I do know he's going to be creative.
There were several combinations, and to me, that the best third line of the season was the hem line of Hyman, Engvall, Mikheyev. I thought they were fantastic together, and I think hopefully we get to see them in the playoffs and do what they did during that time, and that keeps Foligno on the top line with Matthews and Marner, and then you put Galchenyuk back with Willie and John. So we'll see, but you're right. All these points are valid, and Keefe has got some big decisions to make. If you're liking what you're seeing and liking what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Follow us on your favorite social media sites. We're also available in podcast now. Take us for a ride with you in the Maple Leaf Lounge, and head on over to thehockeywriters.com for all this great content. And when you're checking out the Maple Leafs, make sure you swing by the Montreal Canadiens and leave some happy comments for them as well. We always like all the comments from the readers. All right, so what is it going to take, Jim? We'll start with you, for Toronto to beat Montreal.
I think rolling their lines. I think keeping people going. I really like the fourth line and its possibility. I like a third line as a shutdown line. I think smaller ice time in the top two, and at the same time, if Keefe can keep rolling his lines and have success, I think that'll weigh heavily on the Canadiens' ability to really keep up.
Peter, when we were talking to Montreal, they basically said it comes down to Carey Price to beat Toronto. What does it come down to on the Toronto side to beat Montreal?
Well, if that's the case, then you got to score more goals on Carey Price. I mean, pretty obvious right then and there. But overall, I mean, defense was their main focal point this year. They made massive strides in trying to, mitigate the amount of shots and amount of goals against. I mean, the Maple Leafs currently rank 7th with 2.64 goals against per game. Looking at it last year, they were in below 25th overall. So automatically, that's a major jump right there that they prioritize defense. And I think that's going to be the key for them this year. They want that consistency on the back end, and they have the depth. They brought in TJ Brody, who's been phenomenal. Jake Muzzin has been a very strong shutdown stalwart, along with Justin Hall, Zach Bogosian. We see what Rasmus Sandin can do if he gets some ice time. So the fact that they've got so much depth on the blue line, and I didn't even mention Ben Hutton, who has been pretty okay with the Maple Leafs. They have the depth now. If someone gets injured, someone can step in. They have great balance on all three pairings. That's going to be the key for me, where they were great all season. It's got to continue into the playoffs.
I wonder if that's what those assistant coaches are writing back there. He's pretty okay. The Peter rating.
That's better than less.
He's all right. I kind of feel like Randy Carlyle. Sorry about that.
Just okay. Pretty okay is better than just okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now, Alex, when I was talking to Montreal, I said Corey Perry is going to be a problem in the playoffs, and they've got a lot of big hitters. How do you counterbalance that from the Toronto side of things? They were nearly doubled out hit during the regular season when it comes to these two playing each other.
Yeah. So last week when we talked and we had that segment on can the Toronto Maple Leafs match up with the Washington Capitals physically, I'm just going to recycle that exact same answer here. They don't have to be more physical than the Habs. They just have to hold their own. That's all that matters. And they have the guys to do it now. They're capable of doing it. They've got Wayne Simmons who will answer the bell if he has to. They've got Zach Hyman. They've got Nick Foligno. We saw Foligno get into Brady Tkachuk's face the other night when they played against Ottawa. We've got a team full of guys now who are willing to go to war for their own team and stand up for themselves. And I think as long as they do that, they'll be able to handle the likes of Corey Perry and Josh Anderson and Joel Edmondson and all the guys that can throw the body. And I know the Leafs are often looked at as that small, soft team, whatever you want to call them, but I believe now they've got the pieces to really justify them being able to hold their own physically against the Habs. And I think just as long as they kind of keep their heads above the water, they'll be fine.
All right. So this is for the Montreal crowd or those that haven't been following Toronto as closely as we have been this season. And I know Peter is working on this as well, an X Factor type of story. So if you're new to this, you haven't been following them closely, or Montreal, Peter, let's start with you with who are the players that Montreal or non-hardcore Leaf fans should be watching in this playoff series?
Got to start with the dynamic duo of Matthews and Marner. I mean, that's a given. I could go in depth, but we've seen how well they've done this year with Matthews winning the Rocket Richard. That's a given. But if we're going aside or, a different path than those two, I think you got to look at John Tavares. I mean, the fact that he's the captain, had a subpar playoff play-in round last year. Sheldon Keefe went to him and said that we need our leaders to be a major force right now. And he talked with John Tavares on how to try and get that mentality and that mindset going. I wrote an article about it with my veterans, and I included John Tavares in that regard because this is his team. He's the captain. He's leading them with the kind of mentality that you want for a playoff round. And I think with his play, his two-way play now, offense didn't really show at times, but he picked it up. The fact that he's playing solid defensively and it's leading to offense, that's what the Maple Leafs should be buying in. They should be following his lead. So I'm thinking he's going to be a main factor for them.
Old Prof, who are you watching for your X factors? Who should the opposition be keep keying on?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I have to pass on that, actually. The thing that interests me, and I don't mean to go off topic, is that the kids on the Canadiens, Caulfield and Suzuki, are just, they bring an enthusiasm to the play. That's very interesting. And I was thinking about that and who matches up or how they'll match up and the kind of thing that'll happen with them. And there's so many X factors on the stuff. I keep thinking of Galchenyuk as he's physical, he hits, he's big, and I think that helps them play too. So I just think that overall defense is such a X factor on this stuff. I think they will hold their own. I think they will play, and I think that defense is just going to come and come and come. So in that sort of sense, the X factor for me, and I'm going to land on something. Forgive me for the wandering. Is Joe Thornton and the leadership in the room. I think that's amazing. I think Thornton and Spezza and Bogosian and Simmons really give the Maple Leafs that leadership that's intangible in the room. And I think that will make a huge difference in this series.
Well, it's nice because the Montreal writers, they did say that they had to swallow the vomit, but they did say Matthews, they've got to watch, they've got to shut down. So Jim, you returned the favor and then talked about some of their great players that Toronto is going to have to shut down as well. So Alex, who's your key players on Toronto?
Well, Prof briefly touched on it. He kind of laid down the blanket of veteran leadership and all those guys, but the one guy I have in mind is just Joe Thornton. And I don't necessarily want to be repeating him. I'll go a little more in depth. You put yourself in Joe Thornton's shoes. He's 41 years old, and he's entering what will likely be his last ever playoff run. And even just heading down the stretch into these playoffs, he was riding a bit of a quiet point streak for a while, and we've just seen him start to turn up another gear. And if I'm Joe Thornton, I'm thinking, okay, this is my last chance at a Stanley Cup. Whether you put me on the first line with Matthews and Marner, or you bury me on the fourth line with Spezza and Simmons, or you put me somewhere in between, I'm going to go out there and give you my absolute most every single night. And we've seen that Joe Thornton can produce in multiple different roles. He can produce on that top line with Matthews and Marner. He can produce in a depth role. And I just think that in the playoffs, people always say that in the playoffs, push comes to shove, everything, the intensity level goes up a little bit. I think Jumbo is going to be bathing in the intensity, and I think he's going to be a real X factor for the Leafs in these playoffs.
Agreed. I'm going to add to that, though, and it's an X factor, Peter, maybe for you to include in the article. To me, the X factor is Jack Campbell. We haven't seen this guy play in playoffs. We saw him really test his confidence when after that great run to start the season, and then had some losses, and he was beating himself up so terribly after that. I'm a little bit worried about him if he takes a loss, how he's going to bounce back, because there's even a back-to-back scheduled in this series as well. So this isn't, you don't rest your goalie in the playoffs. Like, this is go time. So to me, it's how Jack Campbell, how he does in this as a first-time playoff goaltender.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I do have Jack Campbell already written down. So I already read your mind, Kevin. But at the same time, I could have said Jack Campbell, but I wanted to try and go a different route. There are so many X factors on this team that there are endless possibilities. You could even say TJ Brody. Rasmus Sandin can have a breakout. We don't know unless he gets more ice time. So again, the X factors are endless with this team right now.
All right. So let's just wrap it up now, guys. We'll put a bow on this one, because we went around the horn with Montreal writers to give your prediction. So we're gonna start with Alex. How many games and who wins this series?
I've got Leafs in 6.
Jim?
I'm guessing a sweep by Toronto.
Peter?
Leafs in 6.
And I said Leafs in 5. And can we all agree that the second round will be against the Edmonton Oilers?
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Let's hope.
Winnipeg is what, 2-7-0 against Edmonton this year?
Yeah, and they're limping into the playoffs here. So
Yeah.
But they do have Hellebuck.
Yeah,
They do.
There's an X factor right there. All right, so that's been the playoff preview. We went with Montreal. We went with our Toronto writers. We've had a full Maple Leaf lounge here, but as we always do on our show, we like to do a little bit of fun at the end and do our social media roundup discussion. I wanted to first say, and I try to always keep a positive spin on this, but Mitch Marner made an interesting comment about social media this week when he was asked about, the excitement around this playoff series, and there's no crowd. So how do you as players feel the excitement from Leaf Nation? And he said, well, I don't watch TSN hockey. He said, he said, social media is okay for some things, but it's bad. It's really bad for a lot of other things. I thought that was interesting. He said that the players have not been going on social media. So interesting that that's how it's being used inside the locker room, that it's being totally ignored. So, but also kind of a sad thing that's going on, that there's so many people that I see saying positive things about the team and like hoping, and this is what I've been hoping for and all this, but the players aren't even hearing that, because they're probably going to hear 10 bad things for that one good thing. So, but my social media thing for this week was an awesome tweet sent out by the San Jose Sharks that the Howe family gave Patrick Marleau Howe's stick from his record-breaking games played, and it was being replaced in the Hockey Hall of Fame with Marleau's. I just think that was so awesome. But funny story about Patty Marleau I've been wanting to tell you guys is I started out working in Swift Current, and he was drafted that year out of the Seattle Thunderbirds, and that was his draft year. And in Swift Current, there's always this big summer street festival, and that was the first time that I met Patrick Marleau there, and he had been drafted, so he was a big deal, right? But he's from Aneroid, Saskatchewan, which a lot of places say he's from Swift Current, but he's actually from Aneroid, Saskatchewan, which I looked it up this morning to make sure it's population 50. So this guy did not have an arrogant bone in his body. He was funny, he's down to earth, and he was very nice. And as the night went on, what was funny is you'd look around and you could always see Patty going like this to any of the girls. he's looking at them. And are they looking at me? Are they looking at me? I'm looking at them. That's what he's doing all night. That's what I always remember. All this great run of Patrick Marleau for this season and everything that's been talked about. All I can think of is that fun street dance in Swift Current all those years ago. So, Alex, what did you have from social media this week?
So I pulled a tweet that I thought was both funny and kind of, I guess, ironic in a sense, if you want to call it that. This came from @BrianCRD on Twitter, and it goes like this. Toronto, aka flawed defensive team, have fewer 5v5 goals allowed than the Bruins, cup contender, Florida, defensive stalwart, Tampa Bay, perennial favorites, Vegas, model franchise, Montreal, imposing physical force, and Washington, grizzled vets who know what it takes. So we hear all the time about how the Leafs are a weak defensive team, and the only reason they're succeeding is because they play in the North Division and there's no defense. It's all offense. Yet they've got fewer 5-on-5 goals allowed than any of those teams I just listed, who are all called cup favorites, imposing physical forces, great defensive teams. So it just kind of sheds some light on maybe the flaw in the argument that the Leafs are not good defensively and the North Division alike isn't good defensively.
Yeah, I was over that a while ago. That's why I got this shirt on today. North over everything. It's a Raptors shirt, but that's what I feel too. I think this division was a lot better than all the haters were saying out there. I think it was a fun season to watch, really. It would have been great to be there in person, but that's what it is. Peter, what'd you see out there on social media?
Ooh, kind of recent. Everyone's posting pictures of this. The NHL Instagram account posting their power rankings of the top goaltenders, and Jack Campbell's name is not on there. And that is very upsetting. And a lot of Maple Leafs fans are pissed off about that because the guy had an 11-game winning streak. He was 17-2-2. He's got really great numbers. And the fact that, not a knock against some of the Carolina Hurricanes goaltenders, but Alex Nedeljkovic gets a nod over Jack Campbell, and even he's a bit of a rookie himself. So, a lot of the comments responding to that are just, comical. It's just like, oh, is Jack Campbell not even a goalie anymore? Jack Campbell is invisible. The amount of comments directed towards that was just hilarious for me.
Can I butt in real quick here and say something about that, Peter?
Go ahead.
The part that confuses me the most about that tweet, and I only want to say this because I was actually going to use that same tweet for my social media roundup, but I decided against it last minute, and I'm glad I did. I'd understand throwing two Carolina goalies or two goalies from another team on there. Say if the Leafs were heading into the playoffs with Freddie Anderson and Michael Hutchison, and the Leafs starting goalie had below average numbers. And even then, I'd still be a little bit confused over it because if you're going to put 16 teams on there, would you not just rank the starters from 1 to 16? Yeah. But then you consider the fact that Jack Campbell broke all these records this year, and he's literally been touted as one of the best goalies in the league all season. And he's got a 17-2-2 record. Like you said, he had that 11-game winning streak, and still somehow that's not enough to crack the top 16. Yeah. I was very confused by that as well. I'm glad you brought it up.
Was this, I didn't see this one. Was this NHL on NBC though? Was this an American outlet that put it out there?
It was being screen capped and posted on Twitter from the NHL's Instagram account, I believe. And it was actually one of our hockey writers, Ilyas Hussein. He tweeted out the fact that, which is what caught my eye. He's just like, PSA to all the Habs fans out there. Apparently, according to the NHL's Instagram, the Leafs will be playing with an empty net heading into the playoffs in regards to Jack Campbell. So big shout out to Ilyas for, that tweet, because that really made me give a really good chuckle, and I really still can't stop laughing at that.
The one, the account that I saw tweeted had a bit of a different caption. It was just, "Is Jack Campbell dead?"
No way. He is alive and well, and I think we're going to see some fun with Jack Campbell in the coming weeks and maybe months. All right. Old Prof, I know you're always out there on the Instagram and the TikToks and everything else, checking it all out. What did you see on social media this week?
Well, I sort of want to work backwards. The one thing that really caught my eye and then moved me backwards to the bigger picture was a video of Mitch Marner talking about how great it was to see Freddie Anderson back, and how the team loves the guy, really. And then I kept thinking the difference between being a professional and being a person as a hockey player, and then moving back to Marlowe's beating the thing. He actually broke down in a video, and he said what keeps him, and he just said, first of all, he thanked all of the trainers and everything for keeping him on the ice, and then really said the guys in the room. And it made me really think about these teams that are made up by deep friendships of people. So we have Anderson, who's likely going to leave. What does that then mean for the team, and not just the chemistry, but the friendships? And if Anderson leaves, what happens then when Matthews goes? Because Matthews and Anderson are tight, right? They hung out together in Arizona. They go to, you see them at Raptors games all the time. He said these guys are friends. So professional on one hand, but personal, deeply personal friendships on the other. So my social media just made me sit back and sort of rethink at what point friendships on teams really matter in the long run. So that friendship between Anderson and the rest of the team members is deep. They're confident with him. They like him. They love Campbell too. But at the same time, they just are deep friends. And the same way with Marlowe, it's the guys in the room that really matter, that really keep these guys going. And that's why Marner can say, who cares about the social media? It isn't about the social media. It's about the guys in the room. And that's what I took from social media this week.
Well said. And with Patty, it's all about looking at you. Looking at you, looking at me, looking at you, looking at me. Thank you so much for looking in on the Maple Leafs Lounge this week. We hope that we've set you up for the playoffs. It's going to be so much fun. So make sure you join us back here in 1 week's time so we can talk about those first games that we've been waiting for a generation, from before Peter and Alex were even thought about. Well, maybe thought about. But anyway, we will see you next week. Thanks again to the Montreal writers who joined us earlier. Thank you to all my Maple Leaf writing friends and family. And we will see you next week. Have a great one.